Hello, Anthea. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here with all of you. I see so many friends who I've known for such a long time. Thank you for your hard work for Indian country. Making sure that we elect leaders who care about us, that's hard work. I know because I've done it. I have, I started out as a volunteer and an organizer, and I used to drive all over New Mexico. I've been to every single Indian community in New Mexico, registering voters, getting those folks to the polls, early voting. I used to cook big pots of green chili stew and bake bread, and it's kind of like the way to get people out sometimes is to make sure that they have something to eat. So I was always happy to do that. People knew. I opened a campaign office in Gallup in 2012, and I cooked every day and had food there, and people knew that if they came to make phone calls for me, hi Betty, that they would have something to eat. One of our dear heart state senators, God rest his soul, John Pinto, he'd come every day and bring his wife and daughter, and they would eat dinner before they went home. So it was that kind of office. We campaign in Indian country differently than across the country, and I think that when we're doing that, we have our cultural pride and our traditional pride in the way we do things. So don't be afraid to embrace that heartily as you're working to ensure that we elect Kamala Harris to the White House in November. So when I decided to run for state chair of the party, it was in 2015. It was after we lost our governor's race in 2014. I ran for lieutenant governor. Folks didn't think I would win, but I won. When I decided to run for Congress in 2018, everybody said I couldn't raise the money, I couldn't win, I wouldn't make it out of the primary. It was a 6-way primary, and guess what? I won. The closest opponent to me was 15 points behind me. So I want to just, show you the difference between hard work and, mediocre work. Nothing can take the place of hard work. And all of us know from the beginning of time, for the last many thousands of years, our ancestors, they didn't have that escalator that Michelle Obama talked about, taking them to the top of the mountain. They had to walk, they had to hike, they had to climb. They had to use their ingenuity to get to the top of that mountain because they had a clear vision about who they were doing it for. They were doing it for us. And we owe them. We must honor their legacy by ensuring that we have people in office who care about the things that we care about, who care about clean air, clean water, all of the things that we know our children and our grandchildren need to live healthy, beautiful, enjoyable, happy lives. So I just want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for doing what it takes to get elected, to the delegations, the various delegations that you're in. That in and of itself is very hard work. I ran in 2008. I was very honored to win a seat for New Mexico and saw who is now President Obama give his acceptance speech to be our president. And so I know how exciting things are. It's exciting now. Tonight, it'll be great. Tomorrow, it'll be awesome. When you go home, the work really starts. We have to take this extremely seriously. I know there are some folks who lead their communities in this audience today, and so we're relying on you to lead, to make sure that your folks get out to vote, that they use their voice at the ballot box to ensure that we have a wonderful future for our children. The last thing I'll say, because I know you have business to take care of, is that we know that Kamala Harris will be amazing. It's pretty awesome to think about electing the first woman president. But that's not all she is. She understands what struggle means. Nothing was given to her on a silver platter. She had to work while she was in college. She had to take care of a sick parent. She was raised by a single mom like my child was. She understands the struggles. Tim Walz knows what it's like to raise a family on a teacher's salary. We can't say that about their opponents. We cannot say that about their opponent, certainly the one who's running for president. And so we want people who understand us, who know what it's like for us. So the last thing I will say is that President Biden, I've gotten to know him well over the last 4 years, and he is a good man. He has been a wonderful president. And, my parents, thank you. My dad was in the Marines, my mom was in the Navy. They met during the times they were fulfilling their service. My dad was in a lot longer than my mother was. And growing up, they helped me to understand what public service is. And I can tell by experience that Joe Biden is a true public servant. He is an honorable man. He chose Kamala Harris. He asked us to support her. And I want us to all honor his wishes, to honor the service that he has given us for these 50 years and make sure that we are doing everything we can to get Vice President Kamala Harris elected to the presidency. So let's go win this thing. I want y'all to go home, to not stop until Election Day. Let's make sure we get out every single voter in each one of our communities. I'm so proud to be here with all of you. Thank you for your hard work. Have a wonderful time at the convention tonight.
Yes, now we can officially start. And half the room leaves to follow Deb, and I'm not mad at it. I am not mad at it. We should be. Thank you so much for joining us for the second day of our caucus meetings. It's really an honor to serve as your chair. My name is Clara Pratt. I'm a member of the Diné Nation, Navajo Nation, from Lupton, Arizona, at Sessaana. And I see a fellow Lupton person here in the audience, which is rare. It never happens. There's literally like 10 of us who live there. But yes, thank you, Janine, for being here. And thank you for all of you and all of your hard work. And I think when Deb talks about everybody in this room knowing the struggle, it's true. Some of us had to scrimp and save to get here. These spaces are not largely built for us, and we are making it work. We don't come from places of privilege. My home didn't get running water until I was out of college. And it's weird. It's a weird thing to be in these spaces and to go home to our places where we see there's such a need. And it's a little bit like having whiplash. You're kind of figuring out how to navigate this world. So in appreciation and solidarity with all of you. And I'm joined, of course, by the illustrious leadership team here, Ryan Ramirez as vice chair, and Ruth Anna Buffalo. Ruth Anna Buffalo is secretary treasurer. And I want to give a special shout out to Ruth Anna, because this is her last meeting in the leadership team. And we just wanted to thank you, Ruth Anna, for all of your work and advocacy on behalf of the Democratic Party. Thank you. So I will officially gavel in. I always forget that part. And if you could join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, we will get underway. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We had a girl there. Wonderful, thank you. I was telling a colleague of mine that after the convention wrapped last night, I went down the rabbit hole on X, formerly known as Twitter. And if you need motivation to vote, look at some of the vitriol and hatred that you will see people say about our people. I was so proud. I saw, videos of Lieutenant Governor Flanigan, who, God willing, will be the first Native American governor in the United States. With your help, And you see the Honorable Haaland, and you look at some of the commentary and the trolls that are on the other side, and you see the hatred. These are not Americans. They don't love America. I'm sorry, but we are the first Americans, and we love our country. Talking about how land acknowledgement is ridiculous. Talking about how we're going to come after for our land back. And I'm like, yes, hashtag we will be. But yes, all of these things. So if you need motivation to vote and get your people out to vote, I stayed up too late reading too many negative things. But you know what? It lit a fire in me to say we need to do more, because we cannot be polite. This is not the time for politeness. This is not the time to be very demure or very mindful. It is the time to fight like hell, because our rights are on the line. And with that, now that I've said my curse word, H-E double hockey sticks. Ooh, I'm a bad one. Hold up. Mom's mad. Mama's mad. Now that we can go into prayer. And I would like to invite Vice Chairman of the Mescalero Apache Tribe, Vice Chairman Duffy, a New Mexican, for all New Mexicans in the house, to come up and start us off in the right way in prayer. Either way, Vice Chair.
Good morning, Native Democrats. How you guys doing? Everybody awake? You guys having fun so far? Join me, pray in your own way. Gonna go to Creator, just ask him to bless this day, to bless our time here, and of course provide us safe passage as we go home. Big Echo and done. We ask that you be with us today. We ask that you would guide our conversations, that you would bless those conversations. We give you thanks for the night's rest that you have given us. We give you thanks for allowing us to rise and experience yet another beautiful day that you have created, Big Echo and Done. Big Echo and Done, we just pray that you would be with our peoples, that you would continue to keep them strong, that you would continue to keep them healthy. We ask that you be with our lands, that we will always have clean water to drink, that it will always be bountiful to provide for our people, Big Echo and Done. Big Echo and Done, I just pray that you be with our tribal leadership, that you would continue to guide them, that you would bestow upon them wisdom to uplift our people, to push them forward, Big Echo and Done. Big Echo and Done, I just ask that you be with us as we go through this election season, that you give us the strength to prevail, to be victorious. And Big Echo and Done, we ask that you give us that victory, that we will see Kamala Harris as our next president, Big Echo and Done. All this I ask, thank you. Oh.
Thank you, Vice Chair. With that, we'll get on to our order of business. We have a number of very important people in the room today, and we're just so grateful and delighted that they could make time and be here to share with us some words of wisdom. First up, I will introduce Mayor Kate Gallego, who's the mayor of Phoenix, but I say because she's the mayor of the largest city, she kind of represents all of us in Arizona, even us northern Arizonans. And to introduce her, we have Governor Lewis, who needs no introduction. Thank you, Governor.
Skugsiatic, Anupshuga Governor Stephen Royal Lewis, Gila River Indian Community. Can we give Clara Pratt a round of applause too? Come on. She's working it during the caucuses. She's on the convention floor. She's everywhere. She's with Sean Astin, getting him to endorse the native vote as well. So she does it all. It's really an honor to see leaders, visionaries here across Indian country, in the legal profession, grassroots, our activists, our tribal leaders, leadership, our indigenous matriarchacy, our amazing Native women leaders here as well, the backbone of our Indian nations as well here. And I know that this is our second and our last Native Caucus. And so let's take this in. This is a historic time for all of us. And the Native vote and Native nations and each one of you, we're making history. Let's remember this. Let's reflect on this. And as I reflect on this, I think about our ancestors who are with us. Thank you for the prayer, Vice Chairman. Our ancestors are with us in this room. Our ancestors always watch over us. And as we continue on in this historic journey, let's think about our family members, our relatives back home, those that are keeping our fires safe, our elders safe, our children safe, our homelands, our water safe as we're here doing incredible business. And as we work to elect an administration, our next president and vice president that will support and protect tribal sovereignty, the trust relationship, the treaty relationship, tribal self-determination, that will keep our Indian nations moving forward. That will keep us in our customs and traditions, that history that we had, that we were resilient moving forward. When we elect, and we can't say this enough, when we elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as our next president and vice president of these United States. Now, what they're going to do and what they need is they need all of the coalitions to come together. All of the African Americans, the Hispanic, our LGBTQ relatives, rural, urban. Those coalitions are going to be critical. But how I see it in Arizona, how I see it across Indian country, is that the Indian vote is foundational to this, right? Because we've had to fight for our right to vote. We've had to fight for our right to exist. You know, as we know, this is the 100th anniversary of the Indian citizenship, and that's really not, you know, something to celebrate about, right? Mark Van Norman? That's something to, that's something to be aware of. That's something that is a cruel irony, where we are, and we were citizens, granted that over 100 years ago on our own lands. So when we look at ways where we can continue to fight for our self-determination, to fight for our tribal sovereignty, we can't stop. We can't let up. And we heard that over and over again from Michelle Obama, from Barack Obama last night. Amazing speeches. And again, thank you to Joe Biden for fighting for Indian country, for getting the BIL, getting all that infrastructure going. But the thing is that it's about coalition building, right? It's about coalition building. And it's important that we have those partners on the federal level, on the state level, and on the municipal level. And that's why I want to bring up an incredible leader, the mayor, only the second elected female mayor of Phoenix, our Mayor, Kate Gallego, who is a national leader in and of herself, one of the top-ranking, nationally recognized mayors across the United States. She understands the government-to-government relations. She understands about building these strong partnerships between tribes, recognizing tribes, working with them, partners in regards to water, in regards to sustainability. Maricopa County has one of the largest populations of Native Americans as well, and she understands that. She understands the importance of those respectful partnerships. So without further ado, I want to bring up Mayor Kate Gallego, City of Phoenix. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you. I am Phoenix Mayor Kate Gallego. It is an honor to be with you here today. So in Arizona, we have a selection for Arizonans of the Year, and we are joined by the Arizonans of the Year, Governor Ro Lewis and Chairwoman Flores. Thank you. They are the reigning Arizonans of the Years for many, many reasons, but one is their incredible leadership on delivering a water supply, working out the most essential thing in a desert community. And on behalf of our whole state, thank you for your incredible leadership. They are also here with us today because of something that everyone in this room knows. The Native vote is going to deliver the presidency for President Harris. Chairwoman Pratt and I come from the state with the closest vote in the nation, less than 12,000 votes separating Joe Biden from Donald Trump. 5% of our population is the Native vote, many times the margin of victory. The Native vote delivered Arizona 4 years ago and is going to do it again. We have an amazing Arizona delegation here today, from Debbie Nez-Manuel to Chairman Miguel to so many other incredible leaders. And part of that is a credit to how organized the Native Caucus is. It is not easy to be chair and vice chair of the Native Caucus in a year when the convention is at a sports facility with an unfortunate team name. Yes. But you guys have led with grace and have centered Native voices, from future Governor Flanigan to the incredible leaders here today. We have seen how much the Democratic Party values Native voices and appreciates them. And it is such a contrast with Donald Trump. We should not go back to a presidency who ignored Native voices. Right now, we have seen the Biden-Harris team treat Native leaders as peers and tribal nations as sovereign nations. That is the progress we want in the future, and with your help, we will deliver that. I am so proud to represent Phoenix, which has one of the largest Native American communities of any city in the United States. We are in Arizona, home to 22 federally recognized tribes, and we would not be where we were without our indigenous roots, from the way we manage our water supply to even the name of my city. We are proud in Phoenix to lead the way on recognizing Indigenous Peoples Day as a paid holiday, and hope many other cities will join us, eventually all of our states. But hopefully we make every day Indigenous Peoples Day, whether it be our business leaders, education leaders, nonprofit leaders, and that we make sure that we are communities of boundless opportunities. I know there's some New Mexicans here. I'm originally from Albuquerque. And for me, the Southwest has represented great opportunity. We have great opportunity in front of us right now, the chance to guarantee a future that works for all of us, a future shaped by Kamala Harris and Tim Walz that promises equity, dignity, and prosperity. A future where my son and all of the children across this country have access to clean water, clean air to breathe, a future free from dangerous extreme weather and made worse by climate change. And day in and day out, we are working full speed to attain that future. Thanks to investments from the Biden-Harris administration, we're seeing a glimpse of that future already. And it's inspiring. It makes me want to keep going, as Hillary Clinton urged us to do on day one. We got to continue the momentum. I have the pleasure of serving on the National Advisory Board for the Harris campaign. When Vice President Harris was coming to Phoenix on International Women's Day, she was very kind to ask me how she thought we should mark International Women's Day in Phoenix. And I told her about some of the incredible things happening in Phoenix, but one story that I thought was really important to lift up. Right now in Phoenix, we are building the most advanced semiconductors. Right now, that does not happen in our country, but thanks to Biden-Harris administration, we are changing it. And in Phoenix, it's being built with great leadership from our iron workers, which is 20% Navajo women. So this is technology that will keep our country safer. It is essential to whether it be national defense or information security. These are the chips that also power our cars, and we saw during COVID when Trump was in charge, the supply chain wasn't working and you couldn't get new cars. Very best, most advanced technology. And Vice President Harris sat down with a group of mostly Navajo women, although there were a few Navajo men, and talked to them, and she said to them, "We appreciate what you are doing for our country so much. You are using your incredible skill." Many of these women were multi-generational iron workers. And she said, "You are keeping our country safer. You are making incredible history. And just as Vice President of the United States, I want to say thank you to you for what you do for our entire community." It was such a magic moment to be witness to. Here was the most important, powerful woman in the world, and she was understanding the folks who are keeping us safe and investing in the most modern technology were these incredible iron worker women. That is the type of voices she lifts up. She is not fighting for billionaires like Donald Trump is. She is fighting for all of us. She sees us. She will fight for us. And so we have to fight for her. Let's elect Vice President Harris to the White House. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Ruth Ann is going to introduce our next speaker.
Good morning. I have the distinct honor and privilege of introducing an amazing Anishinaabe queen. I first had the privilege of meeting her when I was with the Native Nations Rebuilders cohort with the Bush Foundation, and she had did a presentation on community organizing, and we know Lieutenant Peggy Flanigan, Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanigan is an amazing community organizer. Our paths happened to cross again after the 2016 election out in DC, the end of November, at the Roots camp that was hosted by Wellstone Action. And she actually invited me to be on a panel with her. And when she was elected into lieutenant governorship, I remember her always saying these words of, "We have to widen the doors to the state capitol. We have to bring more people with us." And that has always resonated with me, being a former state legislator in North Dakota and seeing the importance of having new people come into those spaces, where those spaces, as our sister always so eloquently says, these spaces were never meant for us. They weren't built for us. Actually, they were built for our termination. And so to be in those spaces and to continue to bring change and center our voices, center the people's voice, the community, I'm so super proud to call Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanigan our sister and relative. Please give a warm welcome.
Well, hi, everybody. Bonjour, Peggy Flanigan, Indigenous Cause, Gijuwewadamukwe, Indigo, Guavagaga, Nikagna Jujaba, Mangan. My name is, my English name is Peggy Flanigan. My Anishinaabe name is Speaks with a Loud and Clear Voice Woman. I am a member of the White Earth Nation, and my family is the Wolf Clan. And the role of our clan is to ensure that we're not leaving anyone behind, which is why I am a Democrat. So I know that, how many of you are here to hear Governor Walz? Anybody the other day? When he came into the caucus? Because my phone started melting. Because I think every Native person who was at the convention was like, your governor's here, he's doing so great, he said miigwech. I'm working on it. So anything that you liked that he did, I will take full credit for. But no, seriously, we are in this incredible moment, and I hope that you are soaking it in. I feel so much hope and so much optimism. I ran down the hall. I don't run. I run for office, not for fitness. But I ran down the hall and chased Auntie Deb. And then I was like, you shouldn't do that because she has security with her. They're like, who's this lady, right? Like, but I was like, it's me, the Lieutenant Governor. It's cool. But to give her a hug, to say thank you for everything that she has done. And of course, to my sister, Sharice Davids, as well, and everything that she has done. And it's not always easy to work in systems that weren't created by us or for us, but we have to be there. And Ruth Ann Buffalo, who also has an incredible career in public service. We are so grateful for her leadership. And of course, to our chairs of the Native Caucus who hold it down for all of us every single day. So this is a big convention. Yeah, you guys are doing a great job. And don't sleep on Indian country. We are strategically located in swing states across the country. I know that Governor Walz and I are governor and lieutenant governor because of the Native vote. And I know that President Biden and Vice President Harris were elected because of the Native vote. And, you know, here's the thing that we know as Native people. We are the OG organizers. Right? As we are visiting with people, right? That's what we do. It's also about organizing and building relationships, because it's not just about this one election cycle. It is about what we are building for the future and the kind of infrastructure that we are building for the future. Because in 2018, we elected a lot of Native people and a lot of Native women. And folks are like, oh, that's interesting. Is that a one-off? Is that a blip? Absolutely not, right? We are organizing for the future so that the next lieutenant governor, right, the next Native lieutenant governor, the next Native congressperson, the next Native senator, we have a deep bench in Indian country. And I see my sister Anathea Chino here in the front row, who's the Executive Director, Advanced Native Political Leadership. I am a proud co-founder of that organization because we are training Native folks all across the country. And in order to reach parity, how many Native elected officials do we need? 17,000. How many do we have right now? 284. So we have a little ways to go. But I like our chances. And we all know that it is not just about this generation. It is dreaming our future together and loving future generations into existence. And by the way, that is why we are here today, getting ready to elect Kamala Harris as our next president and Tim Walz as our vice president. The Biden-Harris administration has been incredible for Indian country, and things that I never thought possible. And, you know, that's what happens when you put a Native woman in charge of the Department of the Interior. That's what happens when you make a Shanab the Assistant Secretary of the Department of the Interior. And when we are at the table and able to make our own decisions or work in partnership, government to government, beautiful things can happen, and we've watched it. And so now, as we are getting ready for this next administration, building on the incredible work of President Biden and Vice President Harris, I want to tell you a couple things about Tim Walz. So, Tim Walz grew up in Valentine, Nebraska, and his dad was the superintendent of schools. At the time, there was a lot of tension between the Native and non-Native community, especially as it related to education. And his dad was very clear that every student, non-Native and Native students, deserved a high-quality education, and he wanted to make sure that they had access. That wasn't always popular. But what he watched was Native community members leave food on their doorstep or gifts to acknowledge the kind of leader and the kind of man that Tim Walz's father was. And so I have watched that influence on him over, frankly, the last 20 years. His very first teaching job was at Wolf Creek Elementary School, teaching 4th grade on the Pine Ridge Reservation. And when we first decided to run together, a year before the election, we announced our ticket. It was because we wanted people to know what they were going to get. A teacher, a coach, a veteran with 24 years of service. And you can clap for that, absolutely. And a Native woman, a suburban mom, a nonprofit executive, a state representative. We wanted people to know. And so now, as I am watching him do this work, he said to me, my very first day in office, when we walked into the Capitol, there was the American flag and the Minnesota flag. And he said, why isn't there a flag for White Earth in here? You are a citizen of the White Earth Nation too. And I was like, can we do that? Is that, who's in charge here? And he's like, we are. So if you come to visit, there is a White Earth flag in the governor's reception room. But not only that, he wanted to make sure that Minnesota was a model for tribal-state relations. And we have worked incredibly hard. I see former Chief Executive Melanie Benjamin, who is here, who's a force, who also raised a very good governor and future vice president. It takes a lot of Ojibwe women, right, to make that happen. But no, he was very committed to it. And so the things that we've been able to do, we have codified, codified tribal consultation in state law, ensuring that every agency has to consult with tribes. We require every commissioner, assistant commissioner, deputy commissioner, everyone in our office to go through tribal state relations training, so you can't say you didn't know. We've invested in native language revitalization, indigenous education for all, the very first missing and murdered indigenous relatives state office in the country in Minnesota. So we have a pretty good track record. And the biggest thing is that he created space for a Native woman to lead. So I know that he will be an incredible partner, and you already see it with the joy that they have on the campaign trail. He will be an incredible partner to our next president, Kamala Harris. So Indian country, are you ready? We have how many days? 76, 77, 76. All right, math is hard. It's okay. We just have to go as hard and as fast as we can. This campaign is abbreviated, but in many ways, that is a gift. That is a gift because we know that when Indian country turns out, Democrats win. And we have so much that we can talk to our communities about. The track record of this administration, you know a little bit more about Tim Walz, and I am so excited for what is possible for all of us. And as the mom of an 11-year-old Native girl, Siobhan, woo, yep. Her future is so bright. And I want you to just think about it for a minute. Growing up, I had Geraldine Ferraro. That mattered. But now, she has Auntie Sharice. She has Auntie Deb. Her mom's the lieutenant governor, which she's like, eh. But her reality is completely different. And the reality for our children is completely different. So many people have made this possible. And when it gets hard, we have had hard times before, and we are resilient. But this is our moment to deliver, and this is our moment to shine. We will get there together. I am honored and humbled to be the Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota, but more than anything, I am honored and humbled to be an Anishinaabe Kwe, working side by side with all of you for the good of our country and the good of our people, and I know that we are going to win. Chimigwech. Thank you so much, everybody.
It's a fast-moving day. So next up is somebody that I had the great, incredible honor of meeting when I was appointed to be on the Commission for White House Fellows under President Obama. And one of the folks that I was fortunate enough to be part of selecting was Representative Sharice Davis to be a White House Fellow. So, yeah, trust me, it was not hard work. She blew everybody away and was, you know, to her absolute credit, you know, one of the top vote getters associated. I'm probably not supposed to say that, but vote getters associated with our selection process. So, and just want to thank her for coming and really appreciate all her good work in Congress. So, you know, Congresswoman Sharice Davis.
Sorry, got a Sharice story that I want to share. This one time, we actually went to a MMA fight at one of the casinos in Kansas City, and lo and behold, well, actually we went because we knew Sharice Davids was going to be there, and we knew that a native MMA fighter was there, and so we attended, and we were just blown away by everything. I mean, the walkout song was by the Ho-Chunk Nation, their flag song, and so we were just so proud sitting in there, and then she won, you know, so that's my Sharice story of seeing her, woo! Seeing her in action.
Thank you. Oh. Wow. I didn't know I was gonna wow. I didn't know ooh. couple times. Actually, you know, I got the chance. I'm going to keep holding this. I got the chance to oversee the floor. I don't know what preside. Thank you. Oh my goodness, it's early. I need more coffee, please. I got to preside over the floor when we reauthorized the Violence Against Women Act, and it had tons more Native Indian country provisions to help us protect Indian country. So this reminds me of that. Hi, everybody. For folks I haven't met, I am Sharice Davids. I represent the Kansas 3rd Congressional District. I had the great honor of being elected alongside Deb Haaland as the first 2 Native women ever to serve in Congress. I'm the other one. And then she abandoned me. It's fine. Just kidding. I'm so happy she's our Secretary of Interior. And I'm Ho-Chunk from Wisconsin, but my mom was in the Army for 20 years. And since people are always like, how did you, Ho-Chunk from Wisconsin, how'd you end up in Kansas? My mom retired while she was stationed at Fort Leavenworth. And she served in the Army for 20 years and raised me and my 2 brothers by herself. And then she went and had a 20-year career at the Postal Service. So I learned a lot from my mom about service to country, well, she was also a drill sergeant, so it was like a lot about push-ups. Yeah. And so I do think that, you know, from everything we've heard already this morning, I think that there's a common thread about the journey that we're all on, but certainly those of us who are running for office, have been supporting people who are running for office, and are in other ways serving our communities, and that it's a deeply personal and important journey, because we have to make sure that Native voices are included in every aspect of decision making, whether we're talking about state government, our local, well, I'm not going to get into tribal politics this morning, but you know what I mean. And also in our federal government. And when I was running for Congress, and when I got to Congress, it wasn't just this like career move. It was something that I felt was absolutely necessary for the future of Indian country, but also for the future of the entire country, because Native voices need to be in these spaces. And I do think that there is something about, I have all kinds of stuff here, and then Lieutenant Governor Flanigan came in, and I was like, damn, I was going to say that. Just kidding. But she did talk a lot about some of the stuff that I think is so important around the experiences that we have, that we're bringing to the current space that we're in right now, but also what it means for future generations. So she shared, you know, what her daughter's experience is, which is knowing that that Native people are getting elected to every aspect of leadership in our country, and I think that the mindset change that we are in the middle of is so profound and so huge. I have a story of one of my best friends. She has 2 sons, and one of them was very helpful on our campaign, my first campaign, which feels like I've been in office for 5.5 years, feels like 20. And it was this like amazing experience, knocking on doors, making phone calls. I probably called some of y'all. And her older son was out there knocking on doors. Her younger son was kind of like, I'm going to go play. They're 13 and 11 at this time. And the younger son didn't come to the election night watch party. The older one did. So she gets home the next day, and wakes her younger son up, and he's like, Mom, did Sharice win? And yep, Sharice won. And he was like, oh, what about Laura Kelly? She's our governor now. Yep. And he said, Mommy, do boys ever win elections? We're in a time where our young people, young natives, if they don't see Native people on ballots all across the country, they're going to wonder, what's going on? We're supposed to be on these ballots. We're supposed to be getting elected to these positions. And I think that is part, like that mindset of the power that we have as Native people, as communities, to help not just support the people who are running now, but we're doing it because it's the next generations of kids who are watching what we're doing right now and are getting the support and the confidence that they need to go out and do those things. And then getting here, not just here in this building, but here to Congress, I've had the chance to work on some like really, it's weird to say really amazing stuff because a lot of times the things that we're working on to address issues in Indian country are actually kind of heartbreaking. But they're so necessary. It's so necessary. We have to be out here as, okay, I'm putting my federal government hat on now. So it's weird when I say we, and I'm like, which we am I? The federal government or this is two worlds stuff. But it's really important that we as federal electeds and decision makers are doing everything we can to keep engaged with tribal leaders, with Native communities, and the people who are actually living and breathing the impacts of federal policy every single day. And over the time that I've been in Congress, I have really tried to make sure, not just to keep that in mind for my own office, but to help other members of Congress do that. Because recognition of tribal sovereignty, recognition of treaty rights, recognition of self-determination by our elected officials in the federal government is so important. And that's thank you. No, I was like, please count. No. And I'm a premature clapper, so I'm always clapping, even when people. I'm like, all they said was hello. I'm like, yes, hello to you. But some of these things that we're working on are things like the Native American Voting Rights Act, which we have to get passed. And I do want to note, like, I'm a Democrat. We're here at this Democratic National Convention. This is a bipartisan piece of legislation. And one of the things I always want to make sure that people understand is that when it comes to things like sovereignty and self-determination and the relationship between the federal government and tribal governments, it's not necessarily a partisan issue. When we educate, and that's on some of what I do as co-chair of the Native American Caucus, is educate my colleagues in the United States House and in the Senate about what it means to be a decision maker in the federal government and how we have a duty and an obligation to uphold those treaty rights and tribal self-determination and make sure that we're standing side by side and working with tribal leaders when we're coming up with the provisions of something like the Native American Voting Rights Act, that we're working with our colleagues, sometimes friends, across the aisle, to come up with things that need to be included in the Truth and Healing Commission on Federal Indian Boarding Schools Act, which we did get reintroduced and has already come out of committee, and we're pushing to get it onto the House floor so that we can get that passed this year too. Because some of what we heard from Secretary Haaland and Lieutenant Governor Flanigan are the impacts that the federal Indian boarding schools policies have had on current people in our own communities. Probably, I mean, it's hard to imagine talking to anyone in Indian country and not knowing that they have some sort of history that was impacted by the federal Indian boarding schools policies, by the termination era. And I just got goosebumps actually thinking about it. My grandparents were boarding school survivors, and I know so many So many families have been impacted by this, and I'm going to keep pushing for that piece of legislation too. And then the last thing I want to say is, thank you. The last thing I want to say is just, it's already been said a couple times, but we got to reiterate these things. The power of the Native vote cannot be underestimated. The Native vote is what will get us across the finish line for a President Harris and a Vice President Walz. The Native vote is what will get us across the finish line to making sure that our democracy remains strong. And it's also a huge part of what I believe is the future of this country's healing. Our country has an opportunity to heal, and we are not going to see improvements in all of these different systems unless all of us heal. I don't mean completely. The work is always going to be there. But the more Native voices that are included in our policymaking, and I truly believe this, the more Native voices that are included in our policymaking, the more ready this country will be to heal from the long, complex history of hurts and pain that we have been living through. Thank you. Just kidding. Thank you for real. Thank you guys. Thank you for showing up and doing all the work that you're doing.
All right, folks. I know we're tracking a little bit behind, but that's okay. I'm a proud Arizonan, but I was born in Gallup, New Mexico. So it gives me really at the Gallup Indian Medical Center. Look it up. But it gives me great privilege to introduce Governor Lujan Grisham, who is the 32nd governor of the state of New Mexico, and the first Democratic Hispanic woman to be elected governor in U.S. history. So she is a glass ceiling shatterer, and we are so delighted to have her here. And we know that we're going to make history again when we get Lieutenant Governor Flanigan to be the first Indigenous woman governor as well. So leading the way, leading the charge, Governor Lujan Grisham, thank you.
Well, for all the New Mexicans who stood up, thank you. And for everyone else, thank you for inviting me here. It means a lot to be in the presence of, quite frankly, not just convention goers and members and folks who care about America and the democracy, but leaders, appointed and elected leaders of your own nations and tribal communities, folks who have stood up representing their communities, frankly, for eons. It is an incredible honor for me to be before you, and I respectfully want to make sure that I acknowledge that this kind of governing has long been going on, far longer than this democracy in this country began to put it together. And not surprised, but really touched by soon-to-be Governor Flanigan's reference to how she and Governor Walz represent that they are governing in a state that has sovereign nations. And so I did the same thing. Now, I'm not a member of a tribal community, but when I decided to run for governor in 2018, and part of that desire was seeing what a Trump presidency was playing out to look like. I wanted to make sure that I was in a position to do as much as I could, directly as I could, to protect my state and to work with other leaders who were already doing that same work. So I made my announcement before tribal leaders first. I didn't do it before the state. I didn't have a press conference. I went respectfully before tribal leaders and asked them for their support, their counsel, their guidance, right? That we were going to do it together. because there's more than one elected governor and president in the state of New Mexico. And in our governor's suite in the Capitol, you walk into every leader's photo and a description of the kind of work that they're engaged in to make New Mexico a better state for every single person who lives in New Mexico. And I really appreciated Vice President's invocation and thoughtful guidance and words. I want to tell you that Vice President Duffy is someone that I follow in a number of ways. I'm going to give you 2 examples because we've been talking about consultation and the things that this new administration, with a brand new, lifted up, majority Democratic Congress will deliver in terms of tools and resources. These are the kinds of platforms that we want to make sure that we are moving forward. Number 1, Mescalero Apache Nation joined me last summer in identifying the very best science of reading programs across the country and to tailor them so they would meet the needs of our Native American students across the state of New Mexico. Now, he joined us on that journey, and he will tell you that in our efforts to implement that, the schools that are using our efforts, our partnership in the science of reading, had a nearly 30% increase in outcomes and scores for tribal students and students of every background in the state of New Mexico. And the highest reading score jump in the history of the state of New Mexico was for tribal students, nearly 5%. And we're going to double that this next year. We're tutoring 10,000 students right now in the state of New Mexico. We want to lead the nation in reading, literacy, and proficiency scores while meeting students where they are by not having a discriminatory aspect in our public education systems to start with. And in that effort, we're likely to introduce a tribal education trust fund that puts money directly to students and families so that they're navigating both. I don't care what that door is. Public education, private education, something in between. Those tools should go directly to tribal community members and should not be in the public education system. So it's not one or the other, it's both. It's a parallel track. This is how we have a race to the top, and we're going to get that done. The other thing that we do, we have long been a state that's very clear about tribal collaboration because it's a partnership. And so every state agency has to have a liaison, has to have a collaboration plan, has to file that plan, has to get support and endorsements of that plan before it's executed. I participate directly in state meetings every year, and we have 2, a statewide effort and an education effort all by itself. And let me tell you a couple more things about that education effort. That means that we are building childcare and early childhood education that are totally immersed in tribal language, cultural traditions, history, preservation, leadership. Ground up, making sure that that sovereignty and that ability to direct and support families where they are is at the tribal community and leadership level, and I'm incredibly proud of that. And that has, in addition, that has led to, I don't know that I got the final number, but we're just under, I think, $300 million that comes just from my capital into tribal communities in the state of New Mexico. And as people are talking about the Biden-Harris administration and the work that they do, which is incredible for tribal communities and sovereign nations, and it's more than any other administration, it's still not enough. And we are clear that we are I'm about 5 or 6 times ahead of all the governors prior to me in terms of those investments. And we're going to do even more, including, New Mexico is home. It's the only place in America, free college. So 2-year, 4-year, part-time, full-time, anytime, anywhere, trades, apprenticeships. We want to make sure that we're lining up those opportunities. And in that design, of course, tribal colleges are direct recipients of those investments in the state of New Mexico, because when we talk about historic black colleges and Hispanic universities, we need to be talking about tribal colleges and universities. They should be getting the same level of support. We're going to make sure that we're leading, and these are the kinds of opportunities that we have. So look, I've got 2.5 years left, and I know that even if that's not what we're talking about, we want an America that reflects the values that you have long held and have been asking every other American to hold dear, including making sure that we protect the environment, that we're clear about water, soil, and air, and that we have a planet to deliver, that we are more than stewards now. Right? We are guardians of this planet, and we haven't done the best job. You have. But you didn't have the kind of partners that you deserved in this fight to make sure that we're doing everything we must do to address our climate challenges. And in that regard, just our water in the West, and particularly New Mexico. I'm really proud of the Biden-Harris investments, but I know that it's billions. It's not millions, not hundreds of millions. In New Mexico alone, we've already spent $1 billion plus in federal money for water settlements, and I'm lined up for about another $10 billion to finish them up, and I want them finished up. And in fact, the preservation of all of our sacred water rights runs right through your leadership. So I know that I deliver for every single New Mexican if I make sure that the water settlements that belong to sovereign nations get done. Then I'm protecting everyone in the state of New Mexico, which is exactly what we're going to do. I'm also really proud of this administration, but we got a lot of work to do in healthcare and Indian Health Service. And I'm going to take you back to a really dark moment, because we will not go back. Look, I was on the phone with, I feel like we shouldn't just even mention the name. There was a time that I would like to not remember anymore when President Biden was not in the White House. And governors were called losers for trying to protect their citizens. And I was trying to get Governor Ducey and Governor Herbert of Utah to sign on a letter to make sure that we were doing right in funding for IHS and direct money to sovereign nations to deal with COVID. Why is that going through states? Now, we got there, but initially, they were not interested in doing that. And those governors refused to ask for support unless we started with the Trump administration was the best administration in the history of the United States. And you might imagine it was a no-go for me. And I want to also take you back that I strongly suspect, I want to be very clear about these words, but based on those early COVID tests that you might remember didn't quite work from the CDC, where did they go first? They got distributed out through IHS. And I suspect that that was purposeful. Now, I don't have the evidence to say that my suspicions are true. I want to be very clear about that. But who I knew then and who I know now, I think it's a rebuttable presumption that it's up to them to figure out how to tell me that my suspicions aren't right. And we immediately removed them in New Mexico and got the right tests and made sure that we were doing everything we could to preserve and protect every single member of a sovereign nation in the state of New Mexico. And I'm very proud of that work. So I could talk about all of it, all the work that we need to do, all the investments that we're going to need, all the things that we're going to stand up, all the accomplishments in the state of New Mexico, and all the things that we still need to do, because there's a lot. But I want to end with this. I also agree with the speakers before me. winning this election is going to have a whole hell of a lot to do with the men and women and the courageous leaders in this room. And I don't even want to talk about breaking glass ceilings. They're cement with steel rebar running through them, all right? We all need sledgehammers still. And the fact that I'm the first Hispanic Latina Democratic governor in the history of the United States is a problem, given the number of voters, and the fact that we are showcasing today and every day so many tribal leaders and women leaders, the fact that they're first is shocking, given that you were the first people. That is shocking. So I am clear that when we remind your and our communities what's at stake and what we're building for our children and their future, and that the values that you have always demonstrated and held dear ought to be the values for all across America. It really is about a just America, an America with equality and equity, and if we don't get it right in this room, it's never going to be right for America. And when you do that work again, it's the kind of work that's going to elect the first woman president of the United States of America. And I will tell you, as a 65-year-old elected woman, it's been a long damn time coming. And I am ready for women up and down the ballot and women of color and women representing every community in America that looks like America to get the kind of support that I know you are capable of bringing. So really, for me, this was just to say thank you. Thank you for the honor of being able to be elected and governing in the presence of so many incredible, courageous leaders. Thank you for teaching me. Thank you for supporting me. And thank you for making sure that we restore the kind of America that you have always known could exist, but isn't quite there yet. But it's coming! November, it's coming. So thank you. Have a great rest of your convention. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Governor. New Mexico, it does it right, right? The land of green chili and reproductive freedom. And that's due to the leadership of that woman right there, our governor, Michelle Lujan Grisham, and the green chili, too. We have another wonderful speaker from the great state of New Mexico, Congresswoman Teresa Ledger Fernandez. She represents the 3rd Conditional District of New Mexico. She's been in office since 2021. She's a member of the House Rules Committee, and she is the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Legislative and Budget Processes. We are so delighted to have you today. Congresswoman, thank you.
So does New Mexico deliver or what?
Yeah.
Right. So, Yate, Kawatsi, and Buenos Dias. I'm Teresa Ledger Fernandez, and I have the honor of representing the beautiful and beautifully diverse 3rd Congressional District of Nuevo Mexico. I have 16 indigenous pueblos, the Navajo Nation, the Jicarilla Apache Nation in my district. Can you imagine how beautiful it is? It is gorgeous. I also had the honor of being the chair of the subcommittee on indigenous peoples when I was first elected. Thank you, Betty. And, you know, I then became the ranking member of the subcommittee on Indian affairs and insular affairs when the Republicans took over, because the Republicans didn't really want a subcommittee on indigenous peoples. Now, isn't that tell you everything? Yes. Right? Doesn't that tell you everything? And as I think about this moment, especially listening to the prayer this morning, listening to other things, I sort of want to share a story. I served for 30 years as attorney for Native American tribes in my district and across the country, but then when I had a whole bunch of kids, I said, no, I'm only going to do New Mexico, because isn't New Mexico amazing? And as a very young attorney, I was asked to help fight back against a coal mine. And that coal mine would have destroyed Zuni Salt Lake, where Sacred Salt Mother lived. And so we went into court, and I put on an expert. And when you put on an expert in court, you have to prove that he's an expert. So I said, War Chief, War Chief, what do you do? And his answer, and many of you already know this, I pray. I pray. Ah, you pray for your community. And he looked at the court, and you all know this. That would not be a true prayer. A true prayer must not encompass only your own family, or your own community, or your own pueblo, or state, or country. It must incorporate not only all the peoples on the planet, but the criaturas de Dios, the animals, the plants, and that which is sacred, the water, and the places where we pray. And even the corporation that could destroy Zuni Salt Lake. That is a true prayer, right? That is a true prayer. And I think about this moment that we're in now, a prayer that imagines us all as one that incorporates all of us, that is extended circles, that is a circle that is the beautiful nature of what America is. That Obama said last night, it's this resurgence of hope. The Obamas, right? We're going to refer to them as the Obamas because they are so amazing. The Obamas, that's a resurgence of hope of who we are. Versus the Republican version, versus the Trump version, which would, instead of that beautiful circle that looks like that big full moon that we have, that looks like that beautiful planet, is a bunch of fragmented little pieces where we're fighting against each other, where we are putting corporate greed above sacred places, where we are willing to mine the most beautiful places and give it away. Give it away. I mean, I'm looking out at my colleagues here, and we have stood on the floor and fought against what they are trying to do to all of our lands, to the lands that you hold sacred, the lands that you have been protecting. And that is the different vision that we are looking at today. But, as everybody has said, the key to pushing back against that vision is we held up those signs last night. Vote. 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 Right? Vote. Okay, yeah, let's do it. Vote. 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 And what do they want to do to your vote? What do they want to do to your vote? We just passed a bill on the House floor a few weeks ago that would have said Native Americans cannot use their tribal ID to register to vote. Oh my God, are you kidding me? The first Americans cannot use their tribal ID to vote because they might think you're an undocumented immigrant? Are you kidding me? And you know who else they want to go against? Military. Military cannot use their military ID to register and vote. Are you kidding me? And why do they want to do that? Because who delivered? Who delivered Biden in 2020? Native Americans delivered Biden in 2020, and we are so grateful for Arizona, for Wisconsin. You are going to deliver the Senate to us, keep us in Montana. You are going to help us flip the House so that we can have a subcommittee on Indigenous peoples, so we can do the kind of work that we did. When I first got elected, it was so much fun. Oh my God, Betty McCollum. You know, Betty McCollum is sitting over there. I have a House Ways and Means over there with Gwen, and we got stuff done. I thought that's what you did in Congress. When you showed up, you did historic investments in Native American. You did all of the stuff. Never before have we done that level of investment, right? Advanced appropriations for the Indian Health Service. Never before. So when Congress doesn't do its job and forgets to actually pass and fund the government, what happens at IHS? Not because of Betty McCollum. Not because of the Democrats. We now are fully funding not fully funding, that's part of the to-do list, but we are advanced funding so it doesn't shut down. Those are the things that we do when Democrats are in charge. We think about that. So yeah, right? We think about that circle. We think about that circle, and we include everybody. And it doesn't matter from what tribe, from what zip code, from what state. And it's that lesson that I learned that the people I was so lucky to represent taught me that we will be going in. I have a bill. I see some New Mexicans out there. We have the Native American Voting Rights Act bill, right? We're going to get that passed. We're going to get that passed. We're going to get that passed. And then I have a bill so we could fund tribal governments to do the electoral work they need to do to get people elected. Because it doesn't just say, let's get them. You need a fund. You need a fund. You need to fund it. And I'm going to call it, that bill is going to be the Everett Chavez tribal election bill, because he did everything, and I am so grateful for the work that Everett Chavez did in New Mexico. And it will come back. I could talk about all the other amazing things we did, but it will come back to that vote, to your vote, to say we are going to do everything to overcome all the barriers they have created. So we could do the kinds of things in every state that you heard New Mexico has done. Because I can tell you, I've been in that fight in New Mexico, and it wasn't like that 30 years ago when we started. It was a hard, hard slog. But we made sure that we held our elected officials accountable to Native Americans in New Mexico, and then that's what you get. That's what you get, what you heard from our amazing governor. And we are going to do this across the country, and the indigenous vote, the Native American vote, will get us there, because we are that big circle. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you so much. I'm not very good at the thank yous in the different indigenous languages. So I've got 8 indigenous languages in New Mexico, so I'm only very good at a few of them. Okay. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Congresswoman. We appreciate you. Thank you. All right. Oh, a selfie. Sorry. Oh, selfie time. You should do it this way with the whole crowd in the back. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Next, we have another leading state in the terms of tribal relationships, this great state of Minnesota. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Congresswoman Betty McCollum, who serves and represents the families of Minnesota's 4th District. In 2000, Congresswoman McCollum made history as only the 2nd Minnesota woman elected to serve in Congress since statehood in 1858. So those cement ceilings, these are the ladies that are doing it. Thank you so much, Congresswoman.
It's wonderful to be here, and before I get started, I just want to thank you all in this room, so many of you, for your leadership, for your mentorship, and for allowing me to be a person who helps you get your work done. And I mean, I'm the helper, you're the director. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I had the privilege of being the Democratic chair of the Native American Caucus. It is the only bipartisan caucus, I think it was really important that Sharice brought that out, that functions in the Congress. And so we work with the leadership of Tom Cole, tribally enrolled from Oklahoma, on that. But once Deb and Sharice got elected, I went, oh my gosh, it's time to retire. And so, so I did. I went up to him and I said, you know, you guys are going to be the new co-chairs. Are you ready? Are you ready? And they went, well, we just got here. And I said, you've got this. So they said, well, you know, there's a title, and now Speaker Pelosi uses it, but I got to use it first, and that was Chair Emeritus. So it was great to work with them, because your voices should be the voices leading on this. So we've all heard democracy's on the ballot, right? Sovereignty's on the ballot. Yes. I may be a little more political than some of the other speakers that were up here. What does sovereignty mean? It means controlling your health care. It means controlling your right to worship. It means controlling your ability to have good housing, safe communities. It means you decide how best to respect the elders in your community and to educate the future youth of your nations and our country, the United States of America. It means you're in charge. So sovereignty is important because without sovereignty, honoring trust and treaty obligations kind of becomes, well, we'll get around to it maybe a little later. So sovereignty is on the ballot. And it's been pointed out, the previous administration before the Biden administration, you know, that those dark clouds between Obama and Biden, sovereignty was not respected. It clearly was not. And I can tell you from the fights that Gwen Moore and Sharice and Deb and I and Teresa had on the floor, it was not respected. Sovereignty is on the ballot. Addressing climate change needs to be addressed in a different way when we are interacting as partners from the federal government with your tribal nations. We have whole entire tribal nations that are going to have to move to different locations. What does that mean to your language? What does that mean to your culture? What does that mean to your economic security? You need to be at the table talking about this, not members of Congress deciding what is good for you. You know what you need. So, you know, when one of the things that I learned early on, and one of the leaders from one of my 11 tribes, Leader Benjamin's here from Mille Lacs, Marge Anderson, Melanie Benjamin, and Stanley Crooks. I have 11 tribes. The majority of them are Anishinaabe, but we have several great, outstanding Sioux nations. Anyways, the Mille Lacs band came knocking on my door. They said, I'm a state legislator. I said, well, you know, what do you know about the Mille Lacs Treaty? And I'm a social studies teacher like Tim, and I'm like, we covered a little bit of that in Minnesota history, but take me to school. And they did. And from that, I learned that when you open up your ears and listen, when you open up your mind and think, when you open up your heart and love, you can make a huge difference. So I want to acknowledge the early tribal leaders who led me to the place where I am today. Thank you for being here. So one other thing that I want to make sure that we talk about is, besides sovereignty, is this flag behind me. A friend of mine was sitting next to me, and he said, you know, all the veterans, we were at the Veterans Caucus yesterday. I see this flag at every powwow. Every single powwow. I know Native American men and women overrepresent in our military the work that they do. And that needs to be acknowledged, and I want to acknowledge it because I don't think it was highlighted as much yesterday. So let me, because there's a couple other speakers, and you're going to hear from the great Gwen Walls, who made sure that when there was trouble brewing getting the Violence Against Women Act passed, she just took it in her arms and went to the floor and got it done. But I'm going to go back to sovereignty again and just remind you, if you need any talking points when you're back in your districts. When COVID hit, the idea that money would go directly to tribal nations, as was pointed out by Teresa, was like, oh no, we can't do that. Well, yes, we can, and we did. But it was because of the leadership and the bottom line negotiations at the last minute for many of the people here in this room that it happened. The Senate and the House, under Democratic leadership, held firm with that administration that the money would go directly to tribes. And we've done more since then, but it's not a statute that's written into law that's permanent. It can be taken away in a heartbeat. Sovereignty is on the line. So I want you to remember, as you're going out and talking, a difference it makes, and because it's the Harris Walls ticket, I'm going to tell one story. Peggy was at the table when it happened, about what a difference this administration is going to make in the future. This administration under Tim Walz, you heard about him teaching at Pine Ridge, right? He gets it. He knows he has to think about how we bring equality and respect to the table for everyone. He understands the difficult work that needs to be done. And he has a heart as a teacher, as a father, as a person who serves to make sure it happens. So when you're out talking about why it's important to vote, stand up and say, it's important because we need to protect our sovereignty if we're ever going to have our trust and treaty obligations honored. So thank you for bringing me on this journey. Thank you for being here. And are you going to work to get out the vote? Yes. It is not over until the last vote is counted. And if you want my help anyway, any place, anytime, just pick up the phone and call, and I will be there for you as you have been there to bring me on this journey. Miigwech.
Congresswoman, you know, that is what we need. We love our allies. We love our leaders, our non-tribal, our non-native leaders that sit at the table with us, that understands what it means to work with tribes and tribal people. Congresswoman McCollum, thank you so much for your leadership. And next, Congresswoman Gwen Moore. She is from Wisconsin's 4th. Elected to represent Wisconsin's 4th in 2004, the first African American elected to Congress from the great state of Wisconsin. And Congresswoman Moore graciously sat with us for an hour yesterday to talk to tribal leaders, just to get their insight. And we appreciate you, Congresswoman. Thank you so much.
I mean, after such a generous introduction at that, I can hardly wait to hear what I'm gonna say. You know, you had my girlfriends up here earlier, probably more than I was here for. It was really hard to get here, and my chief of staff didn't leave any breadcrumbs. So I don't know how in the hell I'm gonna get back to the starting point, but I can tell you, I begged for this yellow bracelet, so. You know, I just broke down. But I mean, my girlfriends have been up here. You know, you got the great governor, Lujan, Grisham, and of course, you know, the Rules Committee champion, Teresa, was up here. And Betty McCollum, I'll tell you a story about Betty McCollum in a minute. Sharice Davis and Deb Haaland got elected literally on the same day. And my experience was with Deb Haaland when I went out to meet her as a representative from the Congressional Black Caucus, who endorsed her and sent her a couple of dollars, and so I went out to campaign for her. And instead of me taking the same tone with her as Betty took with them when they were received, saying, hey, I'm gonna yield this position because we actually have some representation here. My reaction, you know, I saw Deb, I hugged her, but then right after I hugged her, I said, where the hell have you been for all this time? And I mean, I meant that sincerely because this is a heavy lift. Y'all heard about the stuff that Sharice is working on, you know, the boarding schools and the trauma of that. Deb Parker works on missing and indigenous children so diligently. I was the author that year of the VAWA bill, where we built in some protections for Native women for VAWA. And even though I'm no longer on the Financial Services Committee, I still got my teeth like a Wisconsin badger into NAHASDA, because housing for Native Americans is critical, just like it is for everybody else in the country. And we need that funding. So I was just looking at the code of ethics there, and I was getting a little worried. about whether or not I was going to be expelled from the room with the comments that I have. Because I agree with everything that Betty McCollum has said with regard to sovereignty being on the ballot and Indian issues being on the ballot like the ones we've talked about. But damn, everything. I mean, what are Indian issues? Everything. And you know, it's not just transportation or you know, whether, you know, the Supreme Court case where indigenous families can get their children and have custody on them. But I want to talk about the sexy part of sovereignty. So y'all just bear with me for a few minutes, okay? Because I'm on the tax committee, the Ways and Means committee. And to me, that's just the sexiest part. I know y'all had Betty McCollum there. She's an appropriator. She comes up with the money. And you know, you had Fernandez. She's on the Rules Committee. She can put bills on the floor. You think these are powerful people, I know. And of course, Sharice Davids, who, you know, I call her Madam Chair of the Native American Women's Caucus, the Vice Chair, the Treasurer, the Parliamentarian, and the Sergeant at Arms of the Native American Women Caucus. Heavy lift, but it's sexy. I am co-sponsoring a bipartisan bill with Representative Swikert from Arizona. Some of you know him as real nerdy numbers dude, but I got a great co-sponsor for the Native American tax bill. I mean, this is really, really sexy. One of the things that Native Americans have been unable to do as treated with sovereignty, if they were sovereign, they'd be like any state or county or municipality that wanted to float bonds to be able to build schools, hospitals, stadium, stuff to serve their public. But no, there's this thing called the essential government test. And y'all know what that is. Now, I ain't Native American, I am black. And I can't count the numbers of jelly beans in a jar or the numbers of bubbles on the top of the soap. And that's the essential government test as to whether or not you could participate in the economy. This bill gets rid of the essential government's test, gives it a barrier. And not only will Native Americans be able to do things like build roads, you know, it's strange when you get to the res and all of a sudden the paving stops suddenly. You ever wonder why? People just can't figure out how to pour concrete 4 more feet. It's because of the essential government test. And when you can't even get a road to be considered an essential government, how in the hell are you going to get a privately owned hospital? It's run by whoever, Lutheran or whoever is running the hospital or the tribes. You can't float private activity bonds for that. That is ludicrous. Pensions. Oh, we're getting really sexy now. This is it. Right before I got on the Ways and Means Committee, for real, I ain't as old as I look. But it has been that long when if you served in an elected position in a tribe, you couldn't get Social Security. Y'all, that's like a tax issue. It's sexy, Social Security. Pensions, oh yeah. The government to be able to set up a pension plan for its employees, tribal employees. Let's talk about it. This is the one that kills me. You know, we have a dearth of medical professionals on tribal lands. Am I wrong about that? Has that changed? But if a young person goes to medical school in the United States of America, their loans or in monies that they get for to be able to finance their medical school training is tax-free. But if you get Indian Health Services scholarships, that's taxable. Come on, y'all. Them is some fighting words there. 3-letter word there, tax on education. Okay, I see y'all showing the clock. Uh-oh. But don't give me the hook until I talk about some real sexy stuff here. The new market tax credit. I mean, actually setting aside that and low-income housing tax credits so that there can be just a chance to be able to get some of that private money for development. This ain't none of this charity, y'all. I ain't talking about no giveaways, no fried chicken fries and, you know, barbecues to raise money to help Native people. This is about giving y'all the sovereignty that's in the treaty. And with that, exit stage left.
Give it up for Congressman Moore. Congresswoman. Let me tell you, I love me some Congresswoman Moore. She gets it. She is our ally. She is a friend to Indian country. Oh, grab her. Let's do a mass selfie. That's right. That's right. She had that was some sexy talk, guys. She's talking tax, she's talking infrastructure, she's talking bonds. She is speaking my language. All right. Okay. With that, I would love to introduce you to someone who is an amazing advocate for Indian country. Proud to call her a friend. She knows what it means to be an activist, a fighter. She's on our team, she's on our side. And, you know, she comes from some activist roots. You may have heard of her grandfather, Cesar Chavez. That's right. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce the campaign manager for Harris for President, Julie Chavez Rodriguez.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Chair Pratt, for that warm introduction, and thank you all so much for inviting me to join you all as you're here, you know, celebrating a truly historic convention in Chicago. As you know, Clara mentioned, I'm the campaign manager for Vice President Kamala Harris and Governor Tim Walz, and I couldn't be more proud to be able to serve in this role. You know, first, to be able to see, I think, such powerful leadership from President Biden as he continued to put country first. And we heard from him on Monday at convention, just really a powerful tribute to all that he was able to accomplish in his administration and understanding what was so important in this moment to be able to you know, really extend the opportunity for Kamala Harris to be our first female president. And, you know, the vice president has had a really important, you know, track record and work in California and with Indian country. She started out as a prosecutor and took on issues around women and children. And she, throughout her time in the Senate, continued, as well as vice president, continued to focus on issues around, you know, murdered and missing Indigenous peoples, and making sure that, you know, no matter what hall of power she was in, that she knew who she was fighting for. And that's something that she will continue to do throughout her time as president. And, you know, she's worked alongside President Biden in helping to deliver so many important, you know, areas for Indian country throughout their administration. Of course, incredible funding that we've seen through the American Rescue Plan, through the infrastructure bill, and through additional investments that I know the administration has been able to make available, but also reinstating the White House Council on Native American Affairs, making sure that we were honoring our trust and treaty responsibilities and strengthening tribal consultation and processes throughout our federal government, continuing to focus on areas and ways in which we could support tribal self-determination, and finding new opportunities for things like co-stewardship as we think about the important work we have to protect our lands and our waters. And we know, thank you, we know that Governor Walz too shares an incredible and important legacy in the work that he's done in the state of Minnesota. And we know that when he and Vice President Harris step into their role as president and vice president, we will have the opportunity to have the first Native governor and Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanigan in Minnesota. And that is truly, truly historic. Now, we've seen tremendous enthusiasm across the board since Vice President Harris and Governor Walz have secured the nomination. And, from kind of Pennsylvania to Arizona to Nevada, but we are not taking any of that for granted. We know that we have important work to do in all of our communities, and especially in our Native communities, to make sure we are energizing and exercising the Native vote. You all make up such an incredible and important segment of the coalition we need to win in states like Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada. We are so excited to be able to, engage in that partnership and make sure that we are, not just fighting for Indian country in the halls of government and in the halls of power, but doing so in terms of fighting for our vote. We have to earn each and every vote, and we hope that we can count on you all to be in partnership with us to make sure we're reaching our Native communities. And I know that, we will continue to really seek your all's input and also advice on ways that we can reach our Native populations, ways that we can make sure that, if it's opportunities to do things in language, that we have the opportunity to do that. So I look forward to working with you all. We have 76 days to get this done, to bring this home. And we know that the next 76 days are going to be a sprint, but we know that we have the power and the strength of all of you in this room and of everybody in that convention hall to ensure that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz become our next president and vice president. And as the Vice President continues to remind us, when we fight, we win. So thank you all for being in this fight with us.
Awesome, thank you. Next, I would like to welcome another New Mexican. We are New Mexico proud today, yes. First Congressional District, Congresswoman Melanie Ann Stansbury, also a wonderful ally for Indian country our needs. And I think a little known thing that most people don't know about you, Congresswoman, you worked in the OMB office. So she understands from the inside out the budgeting issues that we face as tribal communities, and we have such a wonderful ally when we go up there and we talk to her on the Hill and we say, we need this and that. She says, oh, well, let me tell you how it's funded. I don't know that we've had leadership like that. So thank you, Congresswoman. Please come up and join us.
All right, well, good morning, Native American Caucus. Are you guys fired up? Oh, you guys are fired up. I I'm Melanie Stansbury, and I am deeply honored, humbled, and amazed every day to be able to serve New Mexico's 1st congressional district, but most importantly, to serve the 23 sovereign tribal nations in the state of New Mexico and to work side by side to lift up, to support, and make sure that our Native nations can not only revitalize their languages, to claim back their lands and waters, to support their elders, and ensure that every single one of our Indigenous brothers and sisters and children has the opportunity to thrive. So that is why we are all here today, because we care deeply about our communities. And I have to tell you, I was just a regular old policy nerd before I ran for Congress. I was one of those people that sat behind the people who ran for office. And I had the extraordinary opportunity. I started my career actually as a science educator. I worked on water issues, and I worked in communities across New Mexico, including in a number of our Pueblo communities, and it was kids that asked the most important questions. When I would go to Jemez Pueblo or Cochiti Pueblo, people would ask me, why do we manage our water this way? Why can't we get our water rights back? And I didn't know. And so I went back to graduate school, and I spent my career before I ran for office working on the fight to return, restore, and protect tribal water rights. And I had the extraordinary opportunity in 2010 to go intern in the Obama White House. And I went there, I packed a suitcase from Albuquerque, New Mexico, thinking I would stay for 6 months, and I ended up staying for 7 years. And over that time, I had the amazing opportunity working both at CEQ and then in the Obama Office of Management and Budget to work on the BIA and Tribal Affairs budget. And as was said, the most amazing part of that was to have the difficult conversations, to sit down with our tribal leaders, to travel to communities from the bayous of Louisiana and our tribes that are down there to the Bering Strait of Alaska, and to understand what tribal sovereignty actually looks like on the ground and how do we dismantle, support, and rebuild this great nation to support our tribes. And so when I returned home in 2017 and ran for office, I never imagined that I would have the opportunity to walk in the footsteps and to run for office and to now serve as the Congresswoman following on our nation's very first Indigenous Cabinet Secretary, Deb Haaland. And so let me tell you, it's very humbling to stand where I stand and to walk in her footsteps every day and to understand the trajectory and importance of the work that we're doing and the work that comes in front of us. But I want to share a few observations with you. We're going to get a lot of rah-rah speeches, but like the great Congresswoman Gwen Moore, who likes to get nerdy and in the weeds on it, that's where the real rubber hits the road, is the work that we do in and for our communities. And I can tell you unequivocally, because I was there during the Obama administration, that there was never a more pro-tribal president than President Obama when he came into office. He is the president who started the Native Nations meetings with tribal leaders from across the country. He is the person who followed in the work that the President Clinton had done to recognize tribal sovereignty at an executive level and propelled this country forward in a way that we had never seen before. But I have to tell you, when you're in the belly of the beast, the work is hard. It's really hard, especially when you have institutions that are built on the history of this country. And as great as it is as much imperfect as it is great. And so we were only able to get things as far as we were able to get them during that administration before, obviously, the one that came after it. But to watch what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are doing now has been extraordinary. It really has. when you think about it at all levels. You know, when I was at OMB, we were just fighting to get a Native person who understood tribal government and budgeting issues to even have a seat at the table. The Biden administration is the first administration in American history to commit to having a Native person and a Native policy expert actually craft the United States budget in consultation with tribal nations. That has never happened in American history. When I got to OMB, we were told we didn't even have to consult with tribes. Yeah, that was the official line at the time, not because of the administration, but because that was the history of how it had always been done. So when you think about what the work requires, the way in which Kamala Harris and President Biden have led on the Justice 40 initiative, they have examined every federal program and tasked every federal agency to say, where have we underinvested in America? Where have we not served our communities? Where are indigenous communities? And how do we make sure that they have a seat at the table, they can access the resources, and they can spend the money and transform the future of their communities? No presidency has ever done that on the scale that President Biden and Kamala Harris has done. And so when we think about the arc of history, when we think about the work that's ahead of us, when we think about these next 76 days, which every time anyone says that, I have an anxiety attack, really our work is to take all of the stories, the inspiration, the hope, the opportunity, and all the things that we're feeling here and take it back into our communities and help our communities understand that we cannot sit this one out. The stakes are too big. Our right to clean air, to clean water, our right to save this planet from climate change, our right to have a future that is for our children really stands on our shoulders. And so when I think about this moment, this inflection moment that we're at, the weight of history is on our shoulders. And I know that every single person feels that in this room. So when you leave here, my message to all of you to carry home to your communities, to your people, to the young people, is that our moment is now. Our moment is to not only save our democracy, but continue to bend the arc of history. And we will not only do it, we are going to elect Kamala Harris not only as our next president, but the first president who is a woman and woman of color, president of the United States. So let's all take the message home and let's win this!
Who carries a big voice with the vice president, and somebody who is an incredible friend to her, an incredible friend to me, and really somebody, whether you know it or not, an incredible friend to all of us in Indian country. So my good friend, Bakari Sellers. Yeah.
I know. Good morning. Good morning. I am the last thing between you all and lunch. And so I'm going to treat everybody in here like Elizabeth Taylor treated all 7 of her husbands. And that means I'm not going to keep you long. I am so excited to be here with you all today, particularly in this building. I haven't actually given remarks in this building before. And the last time I was in this building was in January of 2017. It was Barack Obama's farewell address. It was a moment that was just filled with the frigid air of Chicago winter. It was the warmth of something that was so amazingly bright and precious, which was the 8 years that was the Obama presidency. And it was the despair looking forward of what would be the next 4 years of a Donald Trump presidency. I've been thinking about what I would say to this particular caucus, and You know, when Ryan invited me, I jumped at the opportunity to be a part of this, mainly because I try not to say no to friends. I'm from the big city of Denmark, South Carolina, where we have 3 stoplights and a blinking light. It's separated by railroad tracks, but unlike most cities, we pour on both sides of the track. And my grandmother, when I was young, used to always tell us this saying that when you're 8 years old, it doesn't mean a whole lot to you, but as you get older, it begins to make sense. My grandmother would always say, you can't fall off the floor. Now, to a 8-year-old, that is decently traumatic because I didn't know what the hell she was talking about. But as you begin to mature, you realize what she was saying. And when I looked around and when I was preparing and thinking about what I would say this morning, there are oftentimes communities like ours that feel like we're on the floor together. There are communities like ours that get put upon, that get left behind. That oftentimes you see even some of our friends to the left and definitely our friends to the right only want to come and talk to us around election time. But where are they when we need them most? In the trenches every single day trying to make sure we lift our communities up out of poverty, because the way that I think about it is right now we live in communities where our elderly and newborn alike are trying to escape that trap of impoverishment. They're having to make those choices about whether or not they get their prescription drugs or pay their utility bills. And that trap of impoverishment has become synonymous with the proverbial dog that chases his tail. We live in communities alike that kids still go to school where their heating and air don't work and their infrastructure is falling apart, where we're not doing enough with resources to prepare them for a 21st century global economy. We live in communities alike that unfortunately when you have a heart attack or a major illness, that can not only break a family but be a death sentence because of a lack of access to care. And then we live in communities alike where people want to take our land and water and resources as if we do not even exist. But the reason I stand before you today is because I recognize and understand that y'all built this country. And you built this country for free. With your own hands, your grandparents and great-grandparents molded this country so that a young skinny boy with a funny name, not Barack, but he showed out last night, but Bakari could stand in here on the shoulders of all of you all in this caucus. You see, that the funny thing about this country is that there is so much that unites us and so much that binds us together that people know that when we stand together, there is nothing that can tear us apart. And one of the more amazing things about last night was that, of course, we had a few jokes about Donald Trump and crowd size. But we were also very forward-looking. And what I want this caucus to do is make sure that you make tomorrow better than yesterday. Because I fundamentally believe that it's not what this country was or what this country is. I believe in what this country can be. But it requires all of you all in here to raise your voices and continue to raise your voices even on those darkest days. I know that we understand the fear that is surrounding what could be if we do not do what's necessary over the next 70+ days. I also remember, Ryan, that we were celebrating a bit too much in 2016 in Philadelphia. We had already visualized what Hillary Clinton's presidency was going to be. We were already talking about what ambassadorships we were going to get and what roles in the White House we were going to have and how we were going to celebrate with our daughters the fact that we had the first female president of the United States. And do you all remember that feeling on that election night in 2016? The first thing that happened was Florida fell and we said, oh my. But that's okay, we still have the blue wall. And then the blue wall came crumbling down, one brick after one brick after one brick. And that feeling that you felt in your stomach, that one that I washed down with Jameson, I don't know what y'all drink, but that was what I was drinking. I'm tequila guy now. I got mature. But you remember that pit in your stomach and how that night felt. A night that began with so much hope and promise, dissipated with despair. And so I come here today to just remind you that all of us who built this country, particularly this caucus, who poured so much into these lands, into this water, to make sure that we are firm enough and have a foundation for this country to grow, understand that you are loved and you are valued, and today you are needed more than ever. This race, as Julie would tell you, is going to be won in the margins. In the margins. That means that every single person in this room has to leave this convention on Thursday and do one thing. You have to leave this room and become an apostle. I want you to leave this room and become an apostle of joy, an apostle of hope, an apostle of truth, and go back to your respective communities, particularly if you live in Arizona or Nevada. But call your friends in North Carolina and Georgia too. Call your family in Pennsylvania. Call them in Wisconsin. Call them in Michigan, and make sure that they understand that they have to stand up. They have to stand up today and register voters. They have to stand up for hope. They have to stand up for justice. They have to stand up for truth. They have to stand up for the premise that we built this country for free. We're going to get what we're owed, and that means that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have to be the president and vice president of the United States of America. I'm so excited and optimistic, yet cautiously, because I know the power that's in this room. I know that when 2 or 3 are gathered together, there is nothing we can't do. And my mom and dad told me that the 2 most important words in the English language were the words, thank you. And they're not nearly said enough. And so particularly, the reason I wanted to come to this caucus is not to ask you for something. Politicians or surrogates, they get up here and want to ask you for something. Ask you for your vote, or ask you for this, or ask you for that. I don't want to ask you for anything. I just simply want to say, as a country boy from Denmark, South Carolina, from the bottom of my heart to this Native American caucus, thank you. Thank you for pouring into me. Thank you for pouring into amazing men like Ryan. Thank you for pouring into Deb. Thank you for pouring into this country. You are the foundation of this country, and I will never forget that. And I simply want to end by saying thank you. God bless you all, and God bless the United States of America.